And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Sports Inquirer Show. This is your host, E. Marcel Portute. Let's make sure our volumes are up. Yeah, we're good. And welcome to another edition of the show. We're recording this on July 9th, 2019. Hope everyone is having a good day out there. We have a full-packed show for you. Lots going on over the past few days in the world of sports. So very excited that I'm speaking to you today. We're going to discuss the Offside Trap portion of the show, which is our soccer recaps. There was a very active weekend in the world of professional soccer. We were at the Atlanta United contest against the New York Red Bulls, and we have some thoughts and commentary as well as good audio from that. We also have thoughts on the U.S. men's national team in the Gold Cup final against Mexico, the women's national team for the United States winning their World Cup match over the Netherlands, and also Copa America took place, and have some things on that. We have the stagger screen portion of the show, which is our professional basketball thoughts. We have a really good stagger screen podcast on the site right now, recapping all of free agency from Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving going to Boston, the Clippers acquiring Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and everything along those lines. We recorded that over the weekend. We recorded that, matter of fact, after the announcement was made. It was made technically in the East Coast. We're based in Atlanta, for those of you listening. It was announced around 1 or 2 in the morning. I was asleep for that part on Saturday morning, but by Saturday afternoon, we were able to get a showdown as far as a show recorded in our Stagger Screen podcast, which focuses specifically on professional basketball. So I recommend that you head to the site and check that out. But we're going to touch on it as well. Recent developments have taken place since the recording of that show. But I would say 95% of what we're going to discuss today is on that show, because we delve deeper into the implications of all of free agency. But we're going to sprinkle it into the Sports Inquirer show today. And finally, in Miscellaneous Department, we'll touch on Wimbledon, the Major League Baseball All-Star break, which is taking place right now, and UFC 239 thoughts. But as always, if you want to find out everything that we're doing, the best way to do that is head to the sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. And as I mentioned earlier, we were at the Atlanta United match against DC United. Not DC United, it was a match against New York Red Bulls, And we have audio from manager Frank DeBoer, as well as Justin Miram and Brad Guzan. So if you want the full, we're going to play clips of it during today's show, but if you want the full audio and video of the pressers that we're about to play, head to the site and make sure you check that out. And as also mentioned, the Stagger Screen podcast, breaking down all of the NBA wheeling and dealings as far as free agency and the trades and other off-season activities. Make sure you check out the site, do a search on there. It's very easy, and you'll get that full podcast for your listening pleasure. You get a Twitter and Instagram on the Sports Inquirer, all one word. So that's a very good way to get all of our up-to-date news and notes as we're posting them throughout the day. Facebook, The Sports Inquirer, and Sports Inquirer. We have 2 Facebook pages, so make sure you subscribe to both of them, and you'll get all of our items going on there. And then finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under The Sports Inquirer. You go to those, you'll get all of our archived shows from the Sports Inquirer show, like this one that you're about to listen to now, or currently listening to the Stagger Screen podcast, which focuses, as I said, on professional basketball, verbal submission. We're going to record our latest verbal submission show probably either later tonight or tomorrow, and that'll break down different professional wrestling organizations from WWE, AEW, New Japan, as well as combat sports. It's all combat sports, so that means wrestling, the mixed martial arts. So we're going to break down a recent UFC event that took place, and boxing as well. So we'll do some of that. We'll preview the Thurman Pacquiao fight coming up this weekend. They will discuss all the UFC stuff and professional wrestling. New Japan had a big event. So we're going to have that up hopefully by tomorrow. But if you want to get the latest on that when we put it up, go to YouTube and SoundCloud to check that out. And archives of this show, I said Sports Acquirer show, and all of the other things that we have going on. We're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to break down all of the soccer happenings over this past weekend on the Offside Trap. And we are back. Offside Trap soccer recap. Yes, we'll start kind of chronologically, a little bit domestically here in the United States, and then expand beyond that And the Atlanta United were able to go to that match. They ended up with a 3-3 tie against the New York Red Bulls. Joseph Martinez registered a second half brace, meaning that he was able to score 2 goals in that time frame. And Justin Miram scored his 3rd goal of the season. However, in extra time, Bradley Wright Phillips leveled the score for the New York Red Bulls and tied the match up, and that's how it ended. It was a draw, so Atlanta did extend its home unbeaten streak to 7 matches. But when you're up 3-2 with only a few minutes remaining, and you allow a defensive lapse like we saw in the Wright Phillips goal, and we'll get to that at the end of our match recap. Very disappointed feeling in the locker room, and you'll hear that from the manager Frank DeBoer to Brad Guzan, that despite the unbeaten streak extending to 7 matches at home, not a very good performance overall when you're trying to move up the Eastern Conference standings. Now, Miram, who's been a strong acquisition for Atlanta for his trade from Orlando, he scored his third goal of the season in the 10th minute of the match, and he was able to take a nice pass from Pity Martinez, who led it to him, and he had a nice cutback with his right foot and slotted into the goal. That was Martinez's highlight of the entire match. We'll get to Pity's struggles a little bit later, but he did have a nice pass to Miram, who was able to slot it past Robles, the goalkeeper, to make the score 1-0. Atlanta's defensive troubles really started in the 29th minute when Flo Pogba suffered a hamstring injury and was replaced by Michael Parkhurst. Pogba was playing a very strong match, good distribution, but it's a cascade of different scenarios of how he ended up starting. First, you have Gonzalez Perez. He was out of the match due to red card accumulation, so he was replaced by Pogba, who has been a reserve defender for the team, but played in the starting role and went very well. He injures his hamstring. He has to leave the match and replaced by Michael Parkhurst, who's been playing as a winger the past few months within Frank DeBoer's system. He started off as a defender with Atlanta the first 2 years of the team's existence, but he has been playing more of a wing role, and now you made him a defender along with Miles Robinson, and he had his struggles throughout the contest. And you saw that happen in the first goal as for the Red Bulls in the 37th minute, as Royer took advantage of a mishandled ball in the Atlanta penalty area. Zakowski was able to get the assist on that goal on a centering pass through the penalty area, and that made the score 1-1. At halftime, not many adjustments were made, and you saw the Red Bulls take advantage of that in the 60th minute when Mule crossed the ball from the right wing, and Brian White tapped it in the back post. Another defensive lapse for the team for Atlanta, and that made it 2-1. Atlanta was starting to make their comeback. In the 79th minute, Joseph Martinez was able to take a pass and head into the penalty area. He was taken down for a foul by Kyle Duncan that led to a penalty shot, which Martinez was able to slot into the net and made the score 2-2. Atlanta held the lead and took the lead in stoppage time. The first part of it, when Joseph Martinez was able to take a header over 2 defenders, and it was one of the better headers you'll ever see scored. Escobar made a nice crossing pass into the penalty area. Martinez headed the ball, and really on a side, he kind of hit it backwards to the side. It wasn't one of those direct headers that you see from most guys where their body is perpendicular to the goal and they head it straight towards the net. He was really jumping away from the net, glanced it on to the side of his head, and was able to score the goal. Past Robles between 2 defenders. As I said, it's one of those moments where Joseph Martinez coming back from his Copa America commitment with Venezuela in his first match back. You think you have the lead, and that's going to be the win. Fans were very excited, but there are still a few minutes left in the match. And 2 minutes after Martinez's goal, Wright Phillips, who's become kind of the nemesis of Atlanta United, scoring multiple big goals against Atlanta in his 3-year existence, was able to take a loose ball that was on a cross from Caceres, went past 3 defenders, and Wright Phillips was able to slide it into the net in extra time, and that was the game, not the game tire, not the game winner for the Red Bulls. I think the pass was supposed to go to Derek Etienne, in the other side of the penalty area. And that may have been what the defenders for Atlanta were thinking about. But Wright Phillips, and we're trying to figure this out among all the press people who he beat. Did he beat Parkhurst? Did he beat Robinson? As far as what he was doing, he really just ran straight down the middle of the field. No one picked him up. You almost would have been better just to knock him down or foul him and take your chance on the penalty. But he ran right down the middle. It was a good pass by Christian, but in the end, Wright Phillips was able to slide it into the net and make the score 3-3, and that's how it ended. Here's manager Frank DeBoer trying to break down that third goal that led to the disappointing tie for Atlanta. Hope we're putting it up right now. Let's see. Hold up. Okay. Oh, there we go. All right, yeah. Here's the manager Frank DeBoer talking about that goal.
I think, when you are so close to victory, whatever pass is coming into your area, you have to stop it. And I think there was, like to somebody's legs or something like that, what I saw from a view. It was maybe it was a good pass, but also I think there was a little bit luck also involved. But still, we weren't tight enough at that moment, and we have to understand, it's 30 seconds or 40 seconds to go, so we have to try to get everything, your body in front of the ball, and it wasn't enough because you work so hard to come back, and then you go with a very bad taste in your mouth. You leave the field, of course, because you can get a really good boost out of that from the comeback or so, of course. And now you're very disappointed because you have only 1 point.
And as manager Rick DeBoer just mentioned, you go from 3 points and possibly being at the top of the Eastern Conference standings or putting yourself right in within a point or two of Philly to now still being in the middle of the pack. You're in a playoff position, but a tenuous one. And it comes off of the 5-1 road loss at Chicago earlier in the week. And while they were able to show a little bit more heart in the match and be competitive, still missing out on those 3 points was a disappointment coming off of that Chicago match where they played their worst match of the season by far. So here is manager Frank DeBoer talking about that rebounding from that match.
Yeah, but that was okay. But still, we have to do better in that, and because I think it was a little bit tight game. It could be either way it goes out. But especially in the second half, I had a feeling that we were losing much more duels. But the reaction was much better. We were from the first second we were there, and that's very positive. But I expect also a reaction, of course, after a defeat like that, of course.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, just the struggles of that, and you compound that with giving up late goals in matches. Atlanta lost at Toronto 3-2 on June 26th on an extra time goal. They lost at Real Salt Lake 2-1 on May 24th with another extra time goal. At least they got a tie in this one for 1 point. They lost multiple points or even more in those two matches. So if Atlanta had the ability to close out matches within the past few minutes of a contest, that means they lost out on 2-4. They lost out on 6 points though actually went 4 points, I'll be fair. They lost out on 4 points in those matches. And the reason you bring that up is you look at the standings, it's very tight in the MLS standings. And the way it's a different format. We're going to bring it up a lot more later on in the season when the playoff picture comes into more fruition. But if you do not have the first overall seed, or at least the first seed in your conference, it goes to from 2 to 7. It's a round robin. Oh, not round. It used to be a round robin or a home and away. You play one match at your home, and then you play at the opponent, and aggregate goals and combined goals, all that stuff. It's one and done. It's a single elimination tournament. So Atlanta's in third place right now with 30 points, and I know they have the 2 matches at hand with several of their teams that are ahead of them, DC United and Philadelphia. Instead of having 30 points, they could have 34. and they would be in second place and only 2 points behind Philadelphia. As I said, you still have a half of a season to go. We're not even at the All-Star break yet, but still, these crucial points being dropped will hurt them in the playoff standings if they do not alleviate or not figure out what is going on with that. And manager Frank DeBoer does talk about that, dropping these points in the crucial part of the year.
I don't think so. I think of course it's very harsh. When you concede a goal also against Salt Lake. In the last second. And I said already in the dressing room, we have to understand, how you avoid it doesn't matter, but you have to avoid those that they can get a chance, and you have to go through that pain because it's hard, It was really a battle, but we have to improve that, and maybe it's mentality, to really understand, hey, what does it mean, to get those points. Or point when you are at a point that you think, that's enough. But now 3 points, was of course the best result for us. But maybe mentally we have to improve on that because lately we, if we concede a goal very early, we coming into emotion, but we just have to still play our own game. And this is. Maybe sometimes the problem of our team, but I'm convinced that we can do much better the next time.
And manager Frank DeBoer being very optimistic about it, or trying to put a positive spin on the late goals, but it's a situation that is going to cost them potentially in the standings if they keep doing that. And also, here we'll get to Vlad Guerrero, goalkeeper. Him talking about dropping points, and we'll go a little bit more micro into the situation with Atlanta, especially Pity Martinez. But let's hear from Vlad Guerrero, his thoughts on it, and then we'll transition from there. So here is Vlad Guerrero.
Feels like a loss. Feels like we certainly dropped points. Winning 3-2 that late in the game, you got to see that.
I think the emotions just ride like a roller coaster in that.
Yeah, exactly that. It's never a nice feeling. Even when you come out on top and you finish with a good result. It's still not a good feeling. You don't want to have that type of performance in terms of a game, but also game after game after game. A good performance, a bad performance. You want to be a team that's consistent, that's steady, and constantly on the rise. And at the moment, it's certainly not the case.
And now is Vlad Guerrero, goalkeeper, talking about dropping points as well. And then finally, we're going to play one last audio clip and then we'll move on from Atlanta United. Pity Martinez once again had an up and down performance, very good pass. That's to Justin Miram for the assist in Atlanta's first goal, but otherwise was not a significant player of impact in the contest. And when he got substituted out of the match for Lemrenowitz, or actually they substituted Lemrenowitz and Brandon Vasquez into the match, you saw a lot more activity from the Atlanta offense. And on our next show, post-U.S. Open Cup, we'll discuss Pity Martinez more specifically, but I'm going to play a clip from manager Frank DeBoer. He discusses it directly because it is a question that a lot of fans and supporters have been asking, is Pity Martinez and just his inconsistency on the pitch. So we'll play this clip and I'll have some more thoughts on it. Here is Frank DeBoer.
You saw this kind of games, with Red Bull. They're putting a lot of pressure. It's long ball, and it's winning duels. And so if you can win those balls, you have to have runners. And Pete is the guy who has to deliver those balls, of course, to Julian or to Joseph or to Justin. So that was the idea behind it. And so they want to really press one against one. And so if he can, come into midfield and some center defender has to mark him, so he can create spaces at that moment for us, to get the relief out of the pressure from them. And so that was the idea behind it also, if you remember in the first game there in New York. in the beginning we had a lot of times that he was free and maybe he didn't make the best choices, but that is the player that you want to have on the ball in that area, and then put guys away to win duels. And in my point of view, he didn't do enough, to avoid, that somebody can give an easy long ball. And you saw Brendan came in, and it was a different story. And I want not from 11 men who works very hard, not 10 or 9 or 8 men. Everybody has to work, especially in this kind of games. These are very difficult games, And so I had the feeling that, we have to win those duels, and that's why I also put Jeff Laurentowicz in. After we put Jeff in, we get chance after chance. And you can think, hey, that's defensively. No, but first you have to win those duels, and we did after that. And you saw every time when we won those duels, it was an open space with Justin, with Joseph. So I think it was good from us that we did it, because I had the feeling at that moment that we were losing grip on the game, and that's why I put those two in, and we turned it around.
So manager Frank de Boer once again, in a very diplomatic way, just saying Pity did not bring a lot to the table in the matchup. As I said, he had that one assist, which you got to give him credit for. Outside that, he was not winning the one-on-one battles, and just not being able to distribute the ball to the wings or to the Miram or Gressel on the sides, and to Martinez in the Joseph Martinez in the middle. And this is where you see the missing Ezequiel Barco and Tito Villalba, and those guys who are able, just more weaponry. And you'd have to question, if Barco was healthy and available, would Pity Martinez be starting? I don't think he would be in this scenario. And this is where it's a very tenuous situation. I'm not saying Pity's going to get cut or they should trade him or transfer him to another team, but this is where it's been a up and down investment so far for the record-breaking signing player. So it's just a situation that he is not bringing a lot to the table in a consistent level, and that's where it's being acknowledged by the coaching staff right now. And they're in a unique spot right now. They have a lot of matches on their slate. They play tomorrow on July 10th in U.S. Open Cup quarterfinals against St. Louis FC. So they have that matchup, and they turn around and have to go to Seattle this upcoming Sunday on June 14th. And after that, after the 14th, they come right back home to Atlanta at post Houston on July 17th. So they have multiple matches a week. So it's where you have to play them, especially when you're looking at the roster setup right now. We have not gotten word. I was not able to go to practice today, but we haven't gotten a health update on Villalba or Barco. It looks, and I don't assume those guys are not going to be available on Sunday because they have not been practicing for the past week or so. So Pity Martinez is on the team, and that's who you're going to have to deal with, and they'll have to figure out whether through him or through the coaching staff some motivation or figure out a way to get him actively involved. Now, I said that Atlanta does play St. Louis FC tomorrow on July 10th. We'll have some audio and video from that matchup on our site and on the next time we do the Sports Inquirer show. So looking very forward to seeing Atlanta try to advance in the U.S. Open Cup. Let's transition to, we'll do a positive spin first. I was going with the men's team on my list, but we'll go to the women's team. They were able to, the women's team for the United States was able to defeat the Netherlands 2-0 to win 2-0 to win their 4th World Cup in history. Megan Rapinoe scored on a penalty kick, and Rose Lavelle scored another very nice goal, one of the better goals that you'll see in, I think, goal of the World Cup. And that was a 2-0 lead for the United States, and they were able to win it. Let's go to on the field. I'll touch on the off the field stuff, and it does tie in on the field a little bit, but on the field itself, they came in as a favorite and delivered. And as we've seen in the past, men and women's tournaments, when you come in as a favorite, even if it was an overwhelming favorite, to deliver on that is an impressive feat. I thought going into the tournament they were the favorite, and they were, but I thought it'd be a little bit more competitive. And you can argue in the semis against England, if that goal is not overturned, that would have made it 2-2. And if it got the extra time, that would have been very interesting to see how the United States would have held up in that match. But overall, when you look at the talent, especially just the forwards and the midfielders with Rose and Megan and Carly Lloyd coming off the bench, kind of the super sub, and obviously Alex Morgan, they are stout up front. The issues were goalkeeping and defense. They did a very good job there. Once they solidified that, and they really put the clamps down on the Netherlands in the second half, they were barely able to get it past half court, midfield. I got my basketball and soccer terms all mixed up. Past midfield, you saw once they were able to do that, the United States was able to take control and get the win. I just heard someone say they're one of the 5 most dominant teams all time. That's not the case. Let's pump the brakes on that. They were a favorite in a tournament that, outside of the Dutch, the Swedes had a very strong performance, and England, but pretty much the semifinals, really not much competition in this tournament. Not taking away from the women, but you look at the slate of what some other teams have had to overcome or their competition. This is not a top 5 all-time team. Now, in women's soccer, I think you look back on it as maybe one of that, but all-time in all sports, I don't think that's the case. We'll go to the off-the-court stuff, on the off-the-field stuff. I think this is an interesting group, and the term I have is polarizing. And we'll break down the 3 reasons for that. The payment, the equal payment issue. If you're listening to the show, the background, in essence, is this. The way these national teams work is not like there's a club team and an international team. You play for a professional team, whatever country that you're in. We'll compare it like the NBA to make it a little more familiar. You have LeBron James, biggest player in the world. He plays for the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers pay him X amount of money, whatever it is, $20, $30 million, doesn't matter. He pay him a certain amount. He also plays, if he wanted to, for the United States national team. They provide him a payment out of their pool or their allotment. Where that money comes from is many sources. It comes from endorsements, whether it's Nike or Adidas or Chevrolet or whatever. It comes from the federation fundraising itself. It comes from whenever the women's team, we'll try to go to the women's team, but whenever they have those friendlies or those international events or tournaments that they host, they get money from that. TV deals, whether it's Fox, ESPN, CBS, NBC, all of that stuff comes together. That's how they get payments from their federation, in this case, U.S. Soccer. You'll also get payments when you're at a major tournament. Now, a lot of times the standard is you get everyone gets like a flat fee or a certain amount of money for playing on the team, and then as for further you advance, you get bonuses. If you make the second round, the third round, semifinals, win the championship, all of that stuff. And that money is usually pulled from the FIFA contracts when they have their World Cup. And what the issue that the women's team has is that they are not receiving equal compensation as the men's team. And the unique situation with this is that the women's team performs at a much better rate than the men do in this particular tournament. And really in general, if you look at their win-loss record and other events, but we're sticking World Cup-wise, the men's team has, I think, made only one final in the history of the World Cup, which dates back to the 1930s. The women's team has won 4 out of the 8 women's World Cups that have taken place in history. So you look at that rate, obviously they've performed at a much better level. You would say revenue-wise, the men's World Cup draws billions of dollars. The women's World Cup is in the high millions. When I say high millions, the numbers are kind of shady, but 70 to 80 million, we'll just say. And the men's tournament is in the billions. So obviously the men's tournament is bringing in more money than the women. Now the women are suing or in a legal battle with the U.S. Soccer Federation. And I'll say this, they do have a point in the fact that they are drawing and revenues, and the thing is U.S. Soccer, it's private. There are a lot. I said the numbers are very shady, but the money that is brought in from these endorsements and these events that they have, or they host the friendlies and things along those lines, they could be comparable to the men. In that regard, they have a case. Now, if you're going to go to FIFA and try to get the equal compensation, that's probably not going to happen. But with the U.S. Soccer, that is a situation where they can work with that. And this ties in to equal pay for men and women. Whoever's listening to this, whatever industry you're in, there have been major issues with gender wage gaps. And sports, as I've always said, is the metaphor of life. Whatever is going on in sports, you can translate it to your personal life, whether it's winning and losing, the art of competition, the ethnicities mixing, or ethnic issues, racial issues, sexuality issues, and we'll get to that on another point, point number 3 with this polarizing group. But all the things that you see in sports translates to real life, and gender payments is a major issue. So it's the backdrop of them playing in a tournament sponsored by a federation that the players are suing. That is very unique and polarizing in a way. So that's number 1. The second thing that makes them a polarizing group is the arrogance, the goal celebrations. I didn't mind celebrations so much, but the reactions to it, that it's offensive. Like the women on the team kind of were turning it onto that, hey, if you don't support us being arrogant and celebrating goals, then you're un-American, and there's some sexism angle with it. That's what it's turned into. I don't think that's the case. You can separate that. And men get criticized, I think sometimes too much. Men get criticized quite a bit for celebrating. In baseball, guys do bat flips or fist pumps, they get criticized. In basketball, someone does a slam dunk and looks at the opponent, they get a technical. People say, oh, they're too arrogant. In every sport, you see this criticism. I don't think the women are any different in that regard as far as the criticism of that. And yeah, Megan Rapinoe, and this is one thing that turned me off about her. When you criticize FIFA for having the finals of 3 major tournaments on the same day, she wanted the Women's World Cup final to be the only thing taking place on the calendar. You can't have that arrogance that you are the only show in town. You have to look at the calendars objectively and see that these are the windows that these players can participate in, with the Gold Cup for the CONCACAF teams, the Copa America for the South American teams. The finals have to take place on the same day. That's just the way the calendar works. In a few years, the next Women's World Cup, it may be the only event on the FIFA calendar. But making that statement, and just in her tone about it, is not very positive, and I think a lot of people are criticized by that. So you have the arrogance, the goal celebration. Alex Morgan with the teacup scoring against England. I know that she does that celebration against other teams, but you're playing England and you're doing the teacup. Come on, have some common sense and put 2 and 2 together. You can do the teacup against Mexico or China, but to do it against England, come on. Like, you have to have some sense that the English are known for the tea, and that's the stereotyping and all that. You have to have common sense in that regard and know that you're going to get criticism for it. And the third thing is the politicalization of the team. I support freedom of speech and your own rights and your own individuality. But when you bring politics and sports together in the light of Colin Kaepernick and some other examples I could think of, but Kaepernick does tie in to this team, it turns a lot of people off. A lot of people just want to watch the ball game, enjoy it, and not think about the politics of it. But when you have Rapinoe, unprompted, and and the way I look at it as well, she was asked if they win or do well, will they be invited to the White House? She said, "F no, we know we're not going to get invited." And then that brings on President Trump and his response, and you know how that goes. And it's just a scenario that people do not want to hear in this situation. And you'll say, well, when can she say that? And when will she have the biggest platform to express herself? She can do that all she wants, and that's fine, but you have to expect the responses and the repercussions of it. I've seen the same thing with people who are supporters of Colin Kaepernick. You expect, with freedom of speech comes freedom of responsibility and freedom of accountability. You can say whatever you want and support Kaepernick or support Rapinoe or not support President Trump, and there are a lot of arguments on all those sides, but you cannot make these statements and have these opinions without having repercussions of it. And I'm not saying that she should be banned or kicked off the team. I'm not saying that at all, but you are going to receive some negativity and you're going to receive some criticism for it. And you have to accept that. And I don't think that there has been a level of acceptance of the criticism that has been coming her way or the team's way. And I think this turns into also, we're just in an era with the politicization of sports. And that has been a good and bad thing. The good part about it is as brings a reality to sports that has often been ignored. That you have these scenarios of people playing in the sport yet not feeling representation in the promotion of it or the ownership of it, whether it's from owning the team or the coverage of it and all of those things. So if it means having a level of interest in that way, that's good. But it's also a fact of you want to watch the game and you want to enjoy it. You want to cheer or boo or root for your team or root against another team. And you just want to do that and be able to move on to other aspects of your life. You guys, trust me, while you're watching your sports for the 2-3 hours a day or the event itself, the majority of your day is going to be tied into the political side of life. Just the way that you live right now, wherever you're living right now. Your taxes, your rent, your job, it ties in the politics. And sports could be an escapism from that. But when you have a women's team in this regard doing that, it does bring some issues to it. I personally can turn it on and off. I just watch the team for what they do and keep it moving. But I know that it can be, when I look at responses from people who are talking to other people about it, they like the team, and they like the United States. And anytime the United States wins on a national level or international level is a very good thing. But this has been a really polarizing team as far as people wanting to support them, but then not liking their antics about it. And then I'll end on this as far as the women's team. If you do not support, actually support's the wrong word. If you do not like soccer and you don't like the women's team, that doesn't make you sexist or doesn't make you racist. It's just your preference in sports viewing. I deal with this a lot of times with different sports I'm to, like soccer. Is like, if you don't like this, then you don't like sports. That's not true. If you don't like, my thing is golf. And I've gotten into golf, started watching it more, but it's not my favorite sport. That doesn't mean I don't like sports. It doesn't mean I don't respect what the guys, the men and women, and the PGA and LPGA are doing, and the athleticism and the skill that it takes to reach that level. I respect that, but it's just not my interest. And multiple people I've seen, this is why I try to stay off social media and Twitter and Instagram and things like that, especially when it comes to national events like the World Cup. would literally see people say, if you don't support the team, then you don't support women. It's like, come on now. Let's take a step back. And there are those that don't like it because they're women, and some don't like it because of soccer, and some just don't like sports in general. But don't make those connections and label you as someone a sexist because they do not like watching the women's team play. And same thing with Kaepernick. And the reason that Kaepernick is tied into this is Rapinoe was the first athlete to kneel while she was playing for her professional team. She kneeled in support of Kaepernick. She was the very first one out of everyone. I should say first, the first non-football player, because Kaepernick did have some teammates involved in that, and there were some NFL guys. So I can't say she was the first one, the outside of Kaepernick to do it, but she was the first non-football player to do it. So and she's gotten some blowback from that as well. But I've seen with Kaepernick as well. It's like if you don't support Kaepernick, that makes you a racist, or that makes you un-American. Or if you do support him, that makes you a really great American. Like, you gotta slow down with these comparisons. Sometimes it's just you don't like something because you don't like the act itself. So, and then there's also a sexuality issue as well with this, because Rapinoe, I didn't make a list of this, but she may be, at least currently now, the most famous homosexual athlete in sports, at least in the United States, as an open lesbian. And her girlfriend Sue Bird, who plays professional basketball, the WNBA with the Seattle Storm. So you add that layer to it, and there's actually a married couple on the team as well. So you add all of this stuff together, and it's like, man, I just want to see a good ball game, and you have all these layers kind of hitting you while you're watching the contest, and the media putting that out there as well. So you add all that together. That's why they become a very polarizing team, and I just try to break down kind of why that's the case from my experiences of watching sports, seeing how it's developed over the years. But still respecting them for winning the championship. If you want to build on this and expand on it and I say to all of you that want the women's team to grow and expand and make this a big movement, support your professional women's team in your area, or support the women's team when they come and play near you. That's the best way to do it. Twitter and Instagram posts and hashtags are great, and that's an element of getting attention to the issue. But commerce has always been the ultimate literally the ultimate money maker deciding factor in sports. And there's a professional women's league that a lot of these players are going to be involved in the next few months. Go to that match, support them, because having a successful domestic women's soccer league will do wonders for the growth of the team and the expansion of it nationally and internationally. Now, they should get, if they show the money and finances with equal pay, yes, definitely. That needs to be a factor, of course, in equality and just showing the numbers. And they are there, I believe. Just looking at some preliminary things. That's important, but support your domestically. Same thing with MLS, Major League Soccer, for the men's team. Support your local team. Watch the matches. Attend them if you can afford to. You do that commerce and you bring in that revenue. That is the way to grow things. And speaking of the men's team, the United States fell to Mexico 1-0 in the Gold Cup final on July 7th. Dos Santos had the game-winning goal in the second half to Mexico to help them win their 8th Gold Cup. I think the United States still in transition under Greg Berhalter, the new head coach of the national team. I saw some good things. Pulisic and McKinney, the two players from the United States, the two teenagers that play in the Bundesliga, especially Pulisic, I thought they had very strong tournaments. You saw the attacking side was pretty good for the United States as far as the wingers. They still need to find a striker. Jose Altidore, you have to score that goal in the first few minutes when you have an open net in front of you, and you got to score that goal to give the United States a 1-0 lead. I think that would have change the tone of the match. But Altidore not scoring that shows his inconsistencies. I think Zardes is okay as a striker, but I mean there are only a handful of elite strikers in all of the world. So the United States trying to work through that is okay. I thought the defense was solid for the most part. Zach Steffen has solidified himself as the number one goalkeeper, so that's good for him. He's going to get a lot of experience, at least training wise. Maybe even play some matches for Manchester City this upcoming fall, so that'll help him in that regard. The midfield is an issue, and you saw Michael Bradley. He gets picked on a lot for not being a good midfielder at this stage of his career, and that's a fair argument. But the midfield allowed a lot of opportunities, and the United States was not able to get a good flow going through the majority of the tournament, and that lied on the midfielders. They got to figure out a way to get that going. But I think reaching the finals is okay. I mean, CONCACAF is not the strongest region of the world. You know, the United States had their struggles throughout. When I say struggles, they not the dominance that you would think as far as facing these teams. Jamaica gave them a big run. Pulisic was really strong in that semifinal against Jamaica, but you got to do better than that against them. You know, and in Mexico, with Tata Martino, the former manager of Atlanta United, they win their first trophy under him. Mexico actually had some players missing from the tournament, so this was you would never say it's a B squad, but they have some talent in the pipeline, and them winning that match was very, very important. And they grind through managers so much. Martino, you would think, could stick around. He's going to stick around at least through this next World Cup cycle, you would think. But they have to find consistency from their manager. And I think Martino brings them that from his experience with the Argentinian national team to his success with Atlanta United here with us. When I say us, I mean in this area. And now so he has national team experience. He knows how to work with players. Players love going for him. I could tell you that firsthand over the previous 2 years, seeing him here in Atlanta. So this will be a good tournament for them to win and to find some footing as they make their march towards the next World Cup. Copa America, Brazil was able to beat Peru 3-1. The tournament was in Brazil, kind of expected. No Neymar, but they were still able to get the tournament victory. Messi complained quite a bit about the tournament being rigged for Brazil. I would not put any type of rigging in and dismiss that claim in any way, but I think Messi is just frustrated with the Argentinian Soccer or Football Federation. He's had issues with them for years, so I think that once again he didn't win a major trophy with the Argentinian national team. He's done everything at the club level you can think of, from winning with Barcelona, winning league titles and cups and Champions League. So he's done everything he can there. But with Argentina, he just struggles with it. And losing in finals, he lost the World Cup final. He's lost several Copa America finals. He just cannot find a way to get that trophy for them. But it was pretty expected what you saw from Copa America. Nothing really stood out for me from that tournament. But yeah, Brazil was able to win that, and once again, we'll be talking about the European transfer windows and a lot of craziness going on there, from Paul Pogba and Manchester United in the standoff, Griezmann and with the Atletico Madrid issues there, Neymar, he might be going back to Barcelona to playing for Real Madrid. He's currently with PSG, but is he going to show up to practice? It's a crazy time in the world of football, the soccer kind of football. So there's a lot going on there, and we'll talk about that as we go on over the next few weeks when training camp starts for the European teams within the next week or two. All right, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we'll touch on NBA free agency and then wrap up the show with the Miscellaneous Department here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, and we are back. Overarching thoughts on NBA free agency, and here's a stagger screen portion of the show where we talk about professional basketball. I will say that thankfully, Kawhi Leonard did not go to the Los Angeles Lakers. If he went to the Lakers to play alongside Anthony Davis and LeBron James, they're the clear favorite in the NBA, and we're back to a Golden State Warriors scenario. And while I like seeing dominance and seeing dynasties, which Golden State turned into, you want to see some good competition as far as other teams playing. And I can, on a short list right now, you can list 6 or 7 teams that are championship contenders. Obviously, the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and a surprise acquisition from the Oklahoma City Thunder. You have to consider them a contender. The Lakers, when you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, they stay on the court healthy for an entire year. They're a contender. You can switch over to the East with Milwaukee with Giannis and the moves that they made. Philadelphia with Embiid and Simmons, along with the acquisition of Al Horford and the retaining of Tobias Harris. The Celtics, if they can get their younger guys to step up, along with Kemba Walker, the new acquisition, they could be a contender. You go down the list of several teams, and then if you have teams that are like Utah and Denver, I think they're not necessarily title contenders, but if they make a run in the postseason and you get a few breaks, they can make things interesting. Maybe Toronto doesn't necessarily go anywhere. Obviously, they're not in the realm. They're not as big favorites or a big contender without Kawhi Leonard, but they're used to playing without Kawhi. They did that a lot during the regular season last year. If they get Lowry to continue to perform, the continued improvement of Siakam and Van Fleet, they get Gasol for an entire year. Ibaka's back. Maybe Toronto will find itself back in the title picture. That's a good thing with all these teams signing, or with all these acquisitions and moves. Brooklyn with Durant, until he gets back in the court 100%, I don't put them in a championship contender spot. But when he comes back in a year, and if he retains even 80 to 85% of his skill level, they're going to be a title contender themselves. So I think it was a very good free agency period overall. And even Toronto, I know people are, well, not people, but you lose Kawhi Leonard and you feel sorry for them. They were able to win a championship. That is good enough to carry yourself for the next few years. And they'll be back. I mean, they have a very good front office. I said some good young players. They'll figure it out and get back to championship contender level. But as I said, I'm just going through my notes here. You see a more balance in the league, and it'll be a very fun regular season, at least this year. We've spent the past 2 years with free agency and trade talks, and talking less about the games themselves and more about all the off the court stuff or transactions. I think now you're going to see more, and that's still going to be part of sports, especially in the NBA, where one player can change your championship aspirations. But I think there'll be more focus on what's going on within the players or what's going on the court, and I think that'll be a good thing as far as that goes. And we're going to switch over to the Miscellaneous Department, and then we'll conclude our show. Yeah, we'll just do it right now. So, yeah, just running down some notes from what I saw this past weekend. Wimbledon has been an interesting development on the two sides. The men, the big three, are showing their dominance more than ever with Rafa Nadal, Roger Federer, and Novak Djokovic. I think you'll see those three in the semifinals, and if one of those three guys does not win the tournament, I'll be very surprised. You gotta lean towards Djokovic. I think he's younger. He's very successful on grass. But Federer has won so many championships there, you can't count him out. And then Nadal, coming off the French Open, you figure he is older and always dealing with injuries. Maybe he doesn't have a quick turnaround. But all three of those guys are playing at a high level, winning matches in less than 2 hours. Complete domination from that side of the field. The women's side, two things. If Serena Williams wins another major, this might be it. That bracket is opening up for her in a very big way, with a lot of players being eliminated. And you're starting to see her return to form. I said when she got pregnant, and tried to return last year, that it would take her about a year to get back into peak form. Now she's a great player and she actually has played ahead of my expectations. But now you see that she's had her daughter and she's been able to train for a full year. And while she's not at her peak form that she was 7-8 years ago, who is going to be? You're starting to see more of her play reach that level of back to, I'll say old Serena, but a better Serena than last year. And she's showing that dominance in her tournament so far. And then Coco Gauff, I love seeing new players in any sport. And we'll touch on Major League Baseball and the Home Run Derby and seeing young players step up. The 15-year-old who is from Florida by way of Georgia. I'm still trying to figure out what her origin is. I know she was born, I guess, in Georgia, but lives in Florida now. But she's from the Southeast. But her development is very good, especially on the women's side. The men need that as well. You can't rely on the Williams sisters to drive the game. And on the men, I mentioned the big three in that side. They're going to get older eventually. You need younger talent to come in. Now, I don't know if Gauff is going to win 20 majors like Serena did. That's a lot of pressure. But still, she's a very good player, very composed. She's going to improve just through age and maturation. But her to make the fourth round as a teenager and a really young teenager is very impressive. And you have her and Osaka. You have some young players that are in their early 20s and teens trying to make their impact on the game. So I think that's very good. So seeing her beating Venus Williams in the first round, I don't know if that was a passing of the torch or changing of the guard, whatever term you want to use, but that was very good seeing her make that run. I saw the Home Run Derby last night for Major League Baseball. Similar theme. I love seeing the young guys get their moment. Would have been good to see Mike Trout and Christian Yelich in the home run derby, maybe the two premier home run hitters in the major leagues. Bellinger as well, Cody Bellinger from the Dodgers. Yes, that would have been good. But seeing Pete Alonzo from the Mets, who ultimately won it, Vlad Guerrero Jr. from the Blue Jays, Ronald Acuna from the Atlanta Braves, Jock Peterson from the Dodgers, all guys 25. I don't know how Jock is. I think he's a little bit older, but all guys 25 and younger. Two of them rookies. And Acuna, in his second year in the league, having that spotlight, hitting all those home runs was very good. I've heard, I keep hearing that. I mean, I read a lot of stuff. I've seen people say that now they're going to watch Toronto Blue Jay games because of Guerrero Jr. Now, he's still not a finished product on the field, but he can hit the ball a long way. Pete Alonzo, 30 home runs or close to that at the All-Star break as a rookie, special talent. Acuna, who is going to be on, if it wasn't for Bellinger and Yelich's awesome years for the Brewers and the Dodgers, Acuna would be in the MVP race. And he still is. He might finish top 5. My point is, all of these young guys coming into the game is very good. And there's going to be a transition period. We've kind of moved on past the Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, like the older guys, Ichiro, if you're into him, those guys, that generation, I would say we're 2019 right now, the 2000s guys, the 2000 to 2010, that when guys that made their impact in majors, those guys have slowly moved on. And what you're seeing in Major League Baseball right now is the game is younger, and the reason it's younger is economics. Well, two reasons it's younger. Economics and drug testing. The economic side of things is that, in essence, the younger the player is, you sign them to cheaper contracts, and keep them without free agency for a longer period. So if you can get a really good player at 22 or 23, or in the case of Acuna and Guerrero, 20 and 21 years old, and you get them under good contract terms, you got to keep them 4 or 5 years where you have to really pay them a massive amount of money. So the economics of it leans towards younger. The days of free agents 34 or 35 years old signing 4-year deals for millions of dollars above market rate, that's not happening. And I think the second reason is drug testing. The Major League Baseball has stepped up, and it's never going to be perfect because whenever you test for one drug, another drug will be found to mask it or to perform even better than the previous one. But the days of the 33-year-old putting together a career year are going to be few and far between with the testing that they have right now. And that's why you're seeing a lot of young guys stepping up and being the leaders of their teams in offensive categories and things along those lines. And it's going to take transition. It's going to take transition for them to know who these players are. We know about Mike Trout, who's the best player in the game, still, but between his personality, where he plays, not necessarily a flashy guy. That hurts a little bit. But once you see him play, you can appreciate what he brings to the table. You look at all these other teams and the talent that you have there. And I think that's where the league is transitioning into that. So you're going to watch the game today or tonight or watch the replays if you're listening to this after the game and say, I don't know that guy. I kind of know that person. He's not familiar to me. How old is he? It's going to be a lot of those type of questions. But give this group of baseball players some time, and I think they'll bring a lot of excitement to the game. And then we'll conclude on UFC 239 thoughts. I think Jon Jones is reaching the end of his career more than the beginning of it. I mean, the man has abused his body in the octagon, out of the octagon. But for him to have a split decision against Thiago Santos, who literally tore his knee in that match and was unable to finish him, I think that shows that Jones is slowing down as a fighter. And that's not a shame because I still think if you put aside the failed drug test, greatest fighter of all time, man or woman, it happens to every fighter. So I think he wants that Cormier rematch to put that to bed. And Cormier has issues of his own. He's going to face Miocic later on in the year for a heavyweight championship. But I think we may only have 2 or 3 more fights for Jon Jones. The man's made enough money to last a lifetime. Has he blown it? I don't know. I don't know his economics. But it's just seeing that guy, a great, kind of reaching the end of his career. And I'll break down UFC 239 a lot more in verbal submission, the ins and outs of it, the technical aspects. But these are just overarching thoughts that I have. Amanda Nunes defeating Holly Holm with a TKO in the first round. Nunes I think she's the greatest women fighter of all time. I don't see much competition for her. I said the same thing about Jon Jones 5 years ago, but guys going to step up, whether it's Gustafsson or Cormier or Santos a few days ago for Jones. There's a woman that'll give Nunes a run for her money, but right now you look at her knockout list. I mean, Holm, Rousey, Cyborg, she's beat them all. So she has really put her name in the running of not only best women fighter of all time, but maybe a case would be a top 10 all-time fighter if you look at her career. I love seeing Masvidal knock out Ben Askren with the flying knee 5 seconds into the match. Askren annoys me. I'm not saying he's a good fighter. He's talented. I think his style could be a little boring, and for a guy who talks as much junk as he does, to be a boring fighter, that's a bad combination in my book. But he literally was talking about, after I beat Jorge, I'm going to fight Stylebender for the title later on this year, or I'll face someone. He was talking all this stuff about fighting for a championship when he was in the same week as fighting Masvidal, who we saw was no joke. I did not like his approach. You literally saw Masvidal training for Askren to shoot towards the left side and to start the match or start the fight. He did exactly what Jorge thought he would. Hit him with the flying knee, knocked him out. And I know people are saying Askren has a very good attitude about it. He's laughing it off, or he acknowledges, look, you talk all that stuff, you deserve, I'm going to say you deserve, because it sounds like I want the man to never fight again. You have to be very careful, especially in mixed martial arts, making proclamations about what you're going to do in the future when in the present you're facing a very tough opponent. But I thought it was a good card overall. I said I'll break it down more in verbal submission later on. But yeah, you saw you saw one dominant performance by Nunes. You saw a dominant fighter really pushed to his brink in Jon Jones, but he's a heart of a champion. He was able to get the win. You saw Luke Rockhold and Diego Sanchez lose pretty decisive fights. And that make you question where those guys are in their career. So overall, very good night of fights, and we'll have a lot more to talk about when we get to that verbal submission. But until then, thank you for listening to today's show. I appreciate it. And as always, if you want to find out more about what we're doing, go to thesportsinquirer.net. Premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. Twitter and Instagram, Sports Inquirer, all one word. Facebook, The Sports Inquirer. And then finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under The Sports Inquirer. Until next time, good fight